Come in, please. Got all your things, Roman? Our next speaker is in the middle of probably the most recent and most current investigation of a UFO case, an extensive, ongoing, recurring UFO contact case that we know of today. He's just returned 2 weeks ago from a visit up there, an extended visit, and where he has verified a lot of the facts in the case, has examined all the evidence and the data, and he's going to present his analysis of, or his view of a new case in development at the present time. And at this point, we can neither get behind the case nor can we refute it. But we're going to let you judge what we're looking at in this respect. And so if I may bring Michael Forte onto the podium here, he'll tell you about his investigation and show you some of the information.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I thought I would start by presenting a few UFO cases, which I myself was personally involved in and took the pictures, and then we could get into an IFO case. And basically it started for myself at a pretty young age where I saw a few things that, do we need to raise it? Okay. How's that? That's better, okay. My own involvement started probably at a young age where a few things happened that at least opened our minds a little bit and gave me curiosity. And as the years went on, I continued to follow through in just about anything that I saw in these types of areas. UFO cases. I was also fascinated with Bigfoot cases, ghosts, all those type of things. Later in life, ended up as an investigator in the paranormal, where we didn't stick in any one field because many times, as a lot of you people in the field have found out, you go out to do an investigation case on, say, an alien encounter, and it turns out it's a ghost. It's somebody that's possessed the house, and it has something to do with the history of the house and things of this nature. So we never restricted ourselves to one area when we went after this because we were never sure what exactly was going to come out of it, but we got done thoroughly looking at it. And for me, I kind of like to keep an open mind in these cases because there are so many varieties of things that happen, and it's finally come to the point where these are becoming known more commonly to people. Investigators are realizing that, hey, a ghost case may not be a ghost case. It may be an entity. It may actually be an alien that has the ability to turn into a little red ball and appear in someone's bedroom and go back out the window. So we have many of these occurrences that overlap. And so I've always kind of been interested in all of them and where they fit. And oddly enough, you will find in many, many situations the dots do connect. And there is a whole picture here that's not being seen, obviously. And so that's where my encounters came in. I myself have some pictures that I took, and from those pictures was invited to be part of another organization that did exactly this, an organization known as Orion, the Organization for Research and Investigation of Nature, and they work in all areas of the paranormal. After seeing the pictures, they asked me to be a guest, and from that meeting, they asked me to work with them, and they began to train me. This was probably a good 10, 11 years ago. It's going on 12 years now. And I got to see an insight from people who had spent 10 years of their life doing this, 15 years doing this, who had degrees in photography and in different areas. So I got to see professionals and how they actually went at a case. And it changed a lot of my views. I thought I had a pretty good hold on how to go about something, but I, like everybody else, had preconceived notions. And you can't go with those in all cases. So I began to think a little bit more analytical, to see things from the side I had not tried to see them from before, and to be trained by people who, quite frankly, had a bit more experience in a variety of areas, which helped me quite a bit. As time went on, I got deeper and deeper involved and more curious, and have spent as much of my time as I can involved in this field in one way or another. Now it's come down to UFO cases as being the thing that's coming up more often. So through that, what I'm going to do is present some slides. The first slides that I had taken myself, some of them were taken actually at the last conference in Tucson that Wendell held. And one of them was the result of an impression I got in my head to do something, so I ran outside and did it, and later found something on the film. I was quite amazed to see that, but I was very excited because when I took the pictures, I didn't see anything. All I got was an impression that says, go out there, get your camera, take pictures of something you can't see, and it'll be on the film. And it showed up. Someone followed me out there and also took pictures, but they had a hard time because I'm taking pictures of something I can't see. So they're going, what are you looking at? I'm not sure, but I'm supposed to do this, so I will. And I have not gotten to see the results of their pictures yet, but I've been curious ever since once mine came back, and hopefully that will be interesting if they also got something on film. But it was there, and it's not going to come off the film, so that's the neat part about that. If you want to start the first, that's a good one. Okay. What had happened here is in approximately 1980, August 13th and 14th in the evening, I was woke up by two dogs that I had, who I had trained very, very well in the area of aggression and everything of that nature. If you decided to raise your voice and raise your hand at me, the dogs would react and pretty much tell you that it's not a good idea without hurting you. So they used to work on different levels as to what degree to go to before they actually used force that would hurt. And I was woke up by them barking in a full attack position. And when I get up, I'm not real nice to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't know about some of you people, but I get up and I holler out the window to shut up, and the dogs refuse, and they're up there looking in the sky, and they're barking at something in the sky. And I'm going, that's kind of odd. It doesn't belong there. In all the years I've been here, I've never seen a planet that ended up in that course. If it is a planet, I'm not sure we'll be here tomorrow because it was so close. I kind of thought it was going to crash before the night was out. It was that low in the sky. Yet it was still far enough away that there was no clear determination of what I was seeing. But I knew it didn't belong. So this prompted me to get up at that strange hour of the morning and get my camera on a tripod and sit on the back porch and photograph it. So I did. And the bottom line of it is we have a few pictures here that I took. While photographing it, I noticed that the object was moving. Now, you see in the first photograph, we have a pretty heavy orange glow around it. And it's not exactly round because the object was moving. And as time went on, I realized that it moved in ways I didn't even realize then. And it took years later as an investigator to actually determine what went on that evening and exactly what it did. If you show the next slide, it starts to elongate a little bit, which there does show motion. I had the camera on a tripod. I was shooting with a Nikon FE, and I had a handheld remote in my hand, so there was no chance of me hitting the tripod or the camera or upsetting that. I really didn't want to be doing this at 2 in the morning, but I thought for some reason I had to, so I was going to do it, and that was it. The one dog, by the way, got in the back of the doghouse and would not come back out again. The other dog pretty much stayed in a full position, and he was not ready to back off. He was very loyal to me that no matter what, I'll get it for you. But I'd like to see him conquer this one. So as time went on, me seeing it, to me, I wasn't overly amazed. It's just that I knew that I had to do this and take the pictures. I went back to bed, and it was 2 weeks later that a girlfriend woke me up and says, you know the pictures you said you took that night? She said, you better get them developed. Because there's a gentleman on the front page of the newspaper that says he watched that object for 2 hours or more hovering over the generators at his place of work. And he's a security guard. I said, geez, I wonder if it's the same thing. So I immediately went and got them developed. And when you go to the store, they go, oh, you got a planet. And I said, oh yeah, the planets fly across the sky like this? And so that's how I sent the pictures off to find somebody that may know what they were talking about that could at least give me an idea, because my curiosity was piqued. The next photo after this, you'll see it continues to elongate. Now it has an incredible glow around this object. It's very, very hot, very, very bright, which obviously there's some kind of energy field. I mean, you just don't get a white light and have an orange glow around it for no reason in the middle of the night in the dark sky. So this really got me, and I said, you know, this has to be something. It's not a planet. It doesn't have. It's not Venus. So as you'll see, if you want to shoot the next one here, it continues. Now you can see, now I'm holding the lens open now, sitting on the porch, kind of like this, because I was really kind of bored with the situation. It's just that I had to do this, so I did it. And I just kept holding the lens open a little longer each time, because I realized that every now and then I would get up and I'd look through the lens, and the thing was traveling across the lens. And I said, it is moving, but from down here, it's so far away you couldn't really see that. You just kind of, you thought so, but you couldn't tell. And by the way, where this was over the back of the Bethlehem Steel that in the days of the war, where they used to build munitions. I didn't know if it had anything really to do with that, but I knew of what was going on at the Steel at one time, and I know every now and then they do government projects because the Bethlehem Steel Research Center is above me on the mountain. In fact, my dogs have been chased out of there several times. And it's very, very high security, and they do work on missile guidance systems and things like that under private contracts at times. So I said, well, you know, this is the other area of the Steel, but who knows what they got going on back there. We used to see the glows coming out of there, but we never knew exactly what they were doing. So from that, I said, well, maybe there is something, and maybe this is watching it. And so I continued to photograph. The next photo, as you will see, kind of boggled me, because for years, I had a friend develop these because the guys in the lab wouldn't print them. So the labs, like a photo place, which at the time I was a freelance photographer, developed them for me, but they wouldn't print them. I said, there's nothing here. And I said, well, what's this? I said, oh, that's a plan. Okay, fine, I need to see it. So I had someone develop it. And for years, I had looked at this photo upside down and backwards and thought that the travel was from the top to the bottom. But as I became an investigator and started looking into my own case more thoroughly and starting to work with the techniques we have in photos of coming up with a clearer shot, I realized this object went the other way and then hung a hook. Now that totally surprised me because the next photos you will see show the object coming down, stopping, going down, and then proceeding itself again. So all along, I thought this photo was like those, until I went and looked at the negatives and said, we've been printing this upside down, and realized that it went up in a very short amount of time. This is the thing that got me. This was very short. I can't measure now because, like I said, memory-wise, I wasn't overly impressed with this. I was just doing what, for some reason, I felt I should. Now, I'd probably get a lot more critical, have video up, I'd have everything up, we'd really be going for it. I'd be calling everybody I know to make sure somebody else saw it as well. But at the time, I was just interested in taking the pictures and going back to bed. I was very tired. So, as it went on, you can shoot the next one. This is what the object had actually been doing. Can you see that down there? Is it okay? You can get through it? Okay. The object had come down, and as you'll see in the middle, there's a little bit of a bump there. It actually stopped long enough for the camera to pick it up, and then continued in its line of travel, and then went down, preceded itself. And it actually shows what you actually see is an object that looks like a top, something with a ring around it. Very simply a flying saucer in most common terms, but it wasn't something I could see with the eye, so I didn't know that at the time. But the photos, through better analysis, showed that yes, we do have an object there. It is clear, it is not identifiable. And that's what happens in many cases. I wish I could say, I know who that is, we know who the occupants are, they abducted me. That did not happen to my knowledge. I went back to bed, that was it. But we do have a phenomenal photo of something that did fly around. Now there are other cases we know of that have very similar photos. One of them is in Canada where a lady takes photos of them, she actually hears them coming, she goes out, and she gets all kinds of lines on the film. And they're really fascinating. And investigators have gone there and been able to be there with her when this happens, and take their own cameras and take the photos. That kind of stuff is, as an investigator, we like that. It's nice, you know, it's nice to have something that you can say, okay, she did those, but now I did these. And I don't care if the rest of you believe it. I was there, I took them. And of course, anytime you take a photo like this, you feel kind of neat that you at least had that opportunity. Maybe the only time you ever get it, but it's your photo, you did it, and you feel kind of neat about that in itself. As time went on, I tried to process the photos some more. And while I was doing that, an object had appeared over here in the corner, as you can see, which is more comfortably looking like a flying saucer than anything I had seen. It has the right shape. But as an objective investigator, even in my own case, my job is to debunk, to find a hole if there's one there. And when I went back into the lab, I couldn't find that object on the negative. So I had to rule this out. And that object was very clear. It was better looking than the object I photoed that gave us all the great movement and direction. And it was a little disappointing, but that's fine. If it's not there, then it's not there, and I know that, and it's done. For the longest time, though, that really looked good. It looked even better than some of the other stuff. There may be one more photo of it blown up a little bit bigger, as you can see. Now, that takes a little bit nicer shape than the line coming across the sky, and you go, geez, you know, I recognize that as being a saucer-shaped object. And it's so clear, it's by itself, it's precise, which, if in fact it was there, I managed to freeze that one, and it stayed still while the other one was traveling across. which to me said, geez, are other guys watching those, or what do we have here? So I thought, wow, this is great. I've got a story behind this now. But in the end, I debunked it, and that photo is not real. It is not there. Now, how that would have shown up, or how we got a UFO-shaped piece of fuzz on the film while it was being developed, or on his camera lens, is a mystery to me. And if I could create a piece of fuzz like that, I think it would be a good trick. It just, when I looked at that, I said, how could this have happened? And to this day, I don't know. But it's not on the negative at this point, as you just saw on the photo to be preceding that. And so as far as I'm concerned, it does not exist, and it was just somehow a malfunction somewhere along the line. But the rest of the photos do hold true. The photo after this, I believe you'll show, is the newspaper article that showed up in the paper with a gentleman that sat there and watched it. Now, I've interviewed this gentleman on several occasions and found out he's a very religious man. He does not even know who Betty and Barney Hill is. This subject basically unnerves him, and he's not real fond or interested in it. It kind of scares him a little bit. So he really has no interest in this field. He's a very, as I said, very religious man. I interviewed his dad, and I interviewed some other people in the family. Just get an idea what kind of guy we got here. Is he a hoaxer? You know, what's the story? Because I still didn't know what I had at that point either. But the man was very genuine. As the years have gone on and I've become more knowledgeable in the field, and he's been able to retrace his steps, he realizes he has at least an hour of missing time that evening. From the time he opened the door at the plant he was at and saw the UFO, for an hour, that's the last thing he remembers. He tried to walk towards the UFO and it went backwards. Then when he came back, it followed him. So he had an interaction going on here, but it wasn't exactly cooperative for him. And as time goes on, we realize that he has an hour of missing time because he came outside, as a security guard should, finds something wrong with his plant, checks his watch, it's 3 minutes of 3, and next thing you know, he looks at his watch again, and it's 3 minutes of 4, and he has no idea what happened in the last hour. None of the key punches were punched in any of the areas of the plant, almost cost him his job. He had a reoccurring sighting again, in which case he called his wife when he saw it coming, and she was in an area of the city where, as it came by, she could see it later as it came across. And after seeing it, she asked him to never talk about it again, and she never wants to know about it if he sees it again. She became that upset with it, because maybe she was hoping that, hey, you know, he just mistook it, it's a plane, and I'll see it, and I can tell him, hey, it wasn't really what you thought it was. But that didn't happen. And she became very clammy about it and doesn't want to know anything. Now, the gentleman has children, and he's a good family man. A lot of cases that we have learned about, they go on for generations. I've been involved in a case that I'm working with right now that's still ongoing. It involves 3 generations and 3 different families. And everyone in all 3 families have particular marks that, based on what I have found in the case, may have been put there by the same entity under similar circumstances, which is quite phenomenal. And what we've learned in a lot of cases, that it does go on for generations. If they've messed with the father, there's a good chance that the son, at some time or another, has had some type of an involvement, whether he's knowledgeable about it or not. I talked to this gentleman, and he does have the ringing in the ears, and he doesn't have bursitis on a normal basis or whatever. And normally he gets it when he's laying down to go to sleep. And he wakes up the next morning, and he feels like he didn't sleep at all, like he worked a whole shift all night, and has no idea what happened. And to me, in a lot of cases that we've seen, these are indications that we should look into this further, possibly do some regressive hypnosis, find out what happened to that missing hour, and find out what may be going on now that he's not aware of. And at some time in the future, most likely that will be done. But I just wanted to present the case. It's something that I did take. It wasn't just my doing. There were other people involved. They're credible people who have nothing to gain by doing this, because this man ended up being kind of a laughingstock in some ways for coming forward. And nobody, none of the employees would believe him. The boss wasn't real thrilled that he wasn't taking care of his job so well, because he's looking for UFOs with binoculars now on a regular basis. But unfortunately, they didn't come when he's ready for them, but they did come back, and he did see him again. And it's very possible that it's still ongoing, and at some time or another, I do plan on getting more deep into the case as he is willing, without upsetting his life, and to find out. And he is curious. I mentioned to him, I said, you know, we could probably pick out what happened to you during that hour that you can't remember under hypnosis. He said, really? I said, yeah, and we could do it. It would be a very pleasant experience for you. I said, it would not be traumatic, and we'll separate you from any type of emotional parts of it if we can, so that there would not be a problem there. And he says, you know, I would like that if you could do that sometime. So that will happen, and I'm looking forward to doing it. The slide after this will give you an idea of what he kind of described as he saw based on the morning call or whatever it was that actually did the drawing. Unfortunately, they weren't there, and if you've ever been there and then somebody else tries to draw it, they go, nah, that's not it. And he just was happy that somebody was listening to him because he was very troubled by it. But that was the rest of the article, and this ended up on the front page of the newspaper. I was happy to see this because I said, well, then maybe what I got is something. Maybe not, but if somebody else saw it, that's pretty good. And he was happy to hear from me because he wanted anybody to tell him that somebody saw it. He called the state police, and they said, what do you want us to do about it? And he called 2 or 3 agencies, and they said, we don't have nothing in the air, it's not ours, you know, it's not there. He got investigators from at the time what we thought to be pretty credible organizations. They all said, nah, you saw Venus rising. And I'm going, okay, what about the setting part? And what about the generators? It was right here. This guy could throw a rock at it. I couldn't. No, he mistook it. That was Venus. It came down a little low at that time. Or Jupiter, or any of those. And I'm, okay, fine. If that's what you need to feel comfortable, fine. But I think there's a little bit more here than what meets your particular estimation of what he had seen. So I'm very happy to know the man and to be able to at least get into his life a little bit and be allowed to find out a little bit more about him personally to do this, because so many times as an investigator we get involved and people's lives get turned over a little bit. As Wendell knows, it's happened in some of the cases he's had. It's very hard to present the information without somebody trying to tear it apart or make an idiot out of the gentleman that had it. And it's one of the risks of our field. So we do our best to try to protect the identity and the security of the individual, and hopefully his happy home life. The next photos, I don't know what's going to show up next. You can show that one. Okay, we went to Tucson, Arizona, and while we were there was some very interesting occurrences, and as I said, one of them was a blackout. And shortly after that blackout, I just got this impression to run out and take a picture outside. And I did, and the picture I had is actually going to be after this one, but after I got done doing that, yeah, right there. Now, up in the sky, probably, let's see, about 12 o'clock, and about a quarter of the way down just below the clouds, there's a round object. It looks like the sun, except that wasn't the sun was over there. And it's not the moon, and it's not a star. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can it actually be seen?
It's
Okay,
in the
I
very
just
center of the
photographed these
screen.
into slides, and they came out a little bit better than even the originals, but I was trying to get enough contrast that you could see it. Now, Wendell has published some really good UFO fact books on ventricular clouds and on red orbs flying. In fact, while we were in Tucson, there were some pictures that were published in his spring, I believe, or summer issue of the UFO Facts, and it had a bunch of red orbs and orange orbs and white orbs that had flown. And orbs are becoming quite popular this year because they've also been filmed making the pictographs in Germany and in England. Although this has not been made public for us to see here in this country, these films are getting around slow but sure. And one was made by the professional team that was over there with the $3 million worth of equipment, and the other was made by a civilian, to my knowledge. So this stuff is coming forward, but it's real tough, as you know, to get good information in this, and they're being very protective of it, and also the impact of having an orb come down and making it. It may not be what everybody wanted to hear. And this is just another one. It was there. I took it. I couldn't see it, but it was there. It showed up on film. It's a very round object. I mean, it's a good clear one, so it's not something that's distorted or it's not mistaken for something else. And this was broad daylight, by the way, so if it was anything other, something that was identifiable, it would be more clear. You know, it would have been a lot easier to see because we had the opportunity, but I couldn't even see it with my eye. I took 2 photos or 3 photos. This is the only one that showed up because I didn't know where to look. I just knew that I had to take pictures of something up there that I couldn't see, and it would show up on film. That's all I knew. And then afterwards, I had my friend with me over there. And by the way, Byron is filming for myself here. No one, as this goes on, I have some pictures that are kind of exclusive at this point. They have never been presented publicly. The gentleman that took them is very, very cautious about it, and we're not going to have them released other than to the group here at this point. So he is filming for myself, and that's why his camera is running. But he comes outside and says, wow, look at that cloud. And if you turn the picture back, No, backward. There's this great lenticular cloud that was right out in front of the hotel. Now here we are listening to some of the best speakers in the world in my book, people like Colonel Robert Dean, who's I guess now ex-colonel, etc. And he had all these great photos of lenticular clouds, stuff that came out of stories from the Bible and all different places. And I was very impressed with this because I had not done as much homework in that area as he had. And he had some good stuff. And here, lo and behold, right in front of the hotel, right after I have this particular occurrence happen, we got a lenticular cloud. And it's a good one. And as it dispersed, it got bigger and bigger, but it kept its shape, which was very interesting. I don't know how it relates to the object. I can't say the object came out of there and flew out. I don't have any of those answers. All I know is it was there, so I photographed it, because it was pretty. It was a beautiful day out there. It was very, very bright. The sun was behind us. Everything was nice. And this was not the direction of the sun, nor was the object that I photographed. So I thought I would at least present it and show it to you. The next photo you're about to see, now, forward now. We can go forward. Or that is forward. Go ahead, keep going. There's my friend here, Byron. And this was the very last day. By now, we're kind of drained. We had about 7, 8 days of one of the best conferences I had been to, and I very much enjoyed it. Was very, very tired. But we wanted to at least go up to Mount Lemon, which I was calling Mount Yellow for a week, and take a look over the city, you know, and just get a view up there, because the mountains up there were absolutely beautiful. So I says to Byron, look, why don't you sit up on the wall here, and I'll take a picture of you, and who knows what'll show up in the photo. I swear, that's what I said. It's just, you know, just suggestion. That's all it was. It wasn't being corny, and he said, let's take a picture, see what the heck happens, you know, who knows what'll show up. And oddly enough, in the corner that would be over here up in the top, there is an object, a line object that flew by. Now, I only had 2 photographs left in the camera. I didn't see anything, again, as usual, and I took the photo. And in the first picture, the object is there. Can you see the line up in the corner? Is it at all visible? Let me see if I can point it out.
Too small.
Well, I guess it's over here. It's a little blurry. All right, shoot the next slide. Maybe this gets a little bit better.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Now, this slide may be a little bit out of focus, and that's my fault, because I tried to photograph this to make it into slides so I can at least show you. But the object is there. There's only 2 photos. They showed up in that photo, and as you can see, for me, it was in this corner, and the next photo I took, it's not there. So it went by. I didn't see it, we didn't hear it, nothing. My guys in the lab did their best job to get that thing off of the film, and they can't. I said, whatever you got's in the film, and it was there. I said, really? And we did everything. We blew it up, we changed colors, densities, we did everything. We could not remove it or enhance it any more than it is. But what it is a straight line object, and it was obviously flying by. It does not have wings, it does not have a tail. I'm sure of that. Wendell thought, and his grandson had thought, that possibly through processing we may be able to see the shadow on the ground. Well, that baby's out there, and if they can come up with a shadow out of there, then I'm very, very excited, because I think it would be quite difficult. I don't even know how far that is away, and I don't know what hill it would have been on that would have shown up on as far as the shadow goes. But it is there, it did happen, and I took the photo. And it was just very exciting. Again, something you have for yourself that you did, and it stays, a UFO. It's not identified, we don't know, but it is very interesting because it was flying, it was moving by, and there was nothing out there. We didn't see anything, just like the word we didn't see. And there are many occurrences where this happens, and I know of cases in Arizona, and I know the people personally, and they've taken the same photos. And they said, yeah, this is quite common. Well, not for me. Only in the investigations I do, but I don't run around getting these photos every day, or I'd probably make a living doing it somehow. The next photo, I don't know if there's anything after that. Yeah, we tried to enhance it a little bit more, and it may come out a little bit clearer on this one. I only had a couple, and each time I tried to change the f-stop on the camera a little darker and a little bit brighter so you could actually see it. But it is there, and it was neat. And this happened after the last conference. So from here on in, I'm now going to present a case to you that is in the early stages of the investigation. And after this, at this point, I would ask that the pictures are not photographed that I'm about to present. This case is a bit difficult. This case gives us information of beings we thought we knew a lot about, such as the Pleiadians, Wendell and Britt Elders and Bob Welsh and some very credible people did an investigation on the Billy Myers case that we thought to be just phenomenal. And I myself have been fascinated with it, and I believe it's credible based on my own instincts. and their abilities to have debunked it if it would have been possible by now, and all the things that surrounded it, because there were many cases that they interviewed a lot of people and they came up with collaborations. I unfortunately have not found anyone to collaborate this particular case, but during the investigation turned up at least 5 other cases surrounding it, which also coordinate with my own case and where it started for myself. Because as I said, it started at a very young age for me, and over the years I've traveled all around the country and I keep ending up back in the same place for these occurrences. Very interesting how that happens. I moved to Florida to get away from Pennsylvania in the cold, and I end up there 3 weeks when they're telling me it's going to snow, investigating the case and beating around in the bushes. And it's, to me, you couldn't have bet I was going to do that, because you would have won. I would not have ever believed that I was going to end up back there doing this. I came up with some very interesting things while doing this. To just give you a little bit, I went back to see a friend, and the friend says, "What are you doing here? I know you don't come up here when it's cold." And I said, "Well, I'm up here investigating a case." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm a UFO investigator." "Oh, you do that?" He said, "Oh my God, I saw an object that was out here. It went up and down, it went sideways. I was writing a letter with an audio tape. And it's all on the audio tape." He says, "I had to stop writing. I was so amazed." And it did all kinds of things for him. He apparently saw it in broad daylight. It went up and down and sideways, and it just blew him away. He was just so excited with this. And I know the guy, and I asked him a few questions like, "What were you drinking that day?" and things of that nature, and nothing. He was totally sincere in everything that he was telling me. He was very, very excited about it. You could tell by his inspiration about what he said that, hey, he probably saw what he said he did. He knows about flying. He knows about ultralight aviation and little planes that you can make and make the fuselages look kind of funny and, mistake them when they fly by. This was no mistake. He was dead sure what he saw. So I then, in trying to find somebody to collaborate this gentleman's case, did interviews with probably 20, 30 people around the neighborhood, because my past is back there. These people knew my parents. They knew my parents before, when they were in high school, and their first girlfriend. So these were people that I felt kind of familiar with. They all knew the family business I was in, etc. So to walk up and talk to them and introduce myself was a lot easier than maybe somebody who they had never heard of before and had no identity with, unless you wanted the cops to be interviewing you a few minutes later. While doing that, I ran into 3 cases, 2 of which were side by side, that related to me very, very large circles in their yards. Both of them for an entire summer. This was rather interesting, because the one person said, "Well, I had just built the house, or just had it built, so we called the construction company," and they said, "Well, we left logs in your yard and made all these circles." And the lady said, "Okay, fine. Then what about my neighbor? Because she's already been here 10 years, and he didn't build her house, and she's got them all over her yard too." And of course, they never have an answer for that one. But so I had interviewed both of them, and the first one said she had a sighting this year. And I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah, and it was right there in the backyard, and it was round, and it had lights going all the way around." And I said, "So was it daylight?" She said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Wow, what else can you tell me?" She says, "Well, my memory's not that great as far as, details, but it was so close, it was very hard to forget. But, she didn't really copy anything down or try to give me any details on exact days and times, but she at least had remembered it and was willing to talk to somebody she had not known before and show me where it happened and tell me about the traces that were all over her yards." And we're talking 5-foot, 10-foot, and 20-foot circles in the yard, the front and the back, very precise. Now I looked at this yard, and there's some big trees planted. How they got in between those trees, it had to be very precise. They had to be very controlled, whatever did it. And like I said, it went on for an entire summer. It didn't go on for one day or one weekend. It went on for a whole summer to 2 different families, which I thought pretty phenomenal. And as I later found out, turned out they're related. They're sisters, which is very interesting. As I said, many cases go on from generation to generation. And this may be one of those possibilities. So I asked the lady, I said, "Well, can you give me an idea of size? I mean, I know you told me it's right there, and it was real big, but how about size?" And one of the things we use as investigators, sometimes MUFON trains you this in your manual, that if you take your arm out at full length and you look at the moon, and it's a full moon, how big is it? An aspirin, a quarter, a dime, nickel, what would it be, So I said to the lady, if you extend your arm out full like this, and she's standing right beside me, and the full moon would be the size of, say, a quarter, how big would this object be? She said 5.5 feet. I said, 2.5 feet out this side, 2.5 feet out that way? She says, "Yeah, it was right there." I said, "That's a pretty big object." She said, "Yeah." I then questioned about her eyesight, which she very proudly said, my eyesight's very good, and I wear glasses, and it corrects my vision, and I can see all the deer out here and everything else. So the lady was very sure about what she saw, and she had no doubt. And it made an impact on her, or I don't think she would have been telling me and going out there and trying to show me every part where it was, etc. So this was very interesting. And then I also interviewed another family. They had a 14-foot burn circle in their backyard. And slightly different time periods, but all within a mile or two of each other. That's what was interesting. I'm in an area here where I'm trying to do a case that's here, and all around here are other cases dotted around. Her children had a sighting. And the 16-year-old, which is now 17-year-old, has become quite withdrawn about it because they saw it very clearly. When they had seen it, it was basically hovering over power lines, which is great. We have so many cases where they're seen and they're over a high-tension line. Why, I don't know. They don't seem to be going after the electricity. It isn't really something they need, but they're there, oddly enough. I recently received a drawing from the child, and it was done pretty well, and it had the lights all the way around and the dome on top and the whole bit. And for a child artist, I think they did pretty darn good, and it obviously got the point across of what he had seen. And to me, just looking at the photo, at the drawing, it obviously wasn't a blimp or something like that, because they watched it stand still. And that was interesting. He was with his younger sister at the time, and she also made me a drawing, which was very cute. And she had the lights all around it, and she said it wasn't like there was lights all around there, but they were spinning around, so this is how I could convey it by making lights all around it, but it still had the same silver dome, etc. Coming from a young child, I was very impressed that they were able to pick up that much detail and put it down. And both of them are accelerated children, which a lot of cases we have found, abductees, etc., contactees. We have children that have a very, very high IQ, who have interest in being an astronaut, who absorb information at phenomenal rates. The teachers in school do not know how to handle it. This is one of those families where the parents have taken on getting them the education that they wish because they asked for it. I want to know about this. I want to know about that. So the families provide this because they realize the kid can grasp it. And they do this. And so we had a family here that had a sighting, was involved, and ended up a bit troubled from it. So I took it upon myself to try to assure the mother that you're not alone. There are many cases like this. And we try to help in any way we can to assure you that this is common in this field and in this particular type of thing, and that your children are very special, that they're not weird, they're not retarded, they're not strange in any way. And that I don't think anyone is an exception, except other than maybe myself, to having a sighting where it doesn't somehow stick in their head and give them certain amounts of reactions that we find to be rather interesting, such as they're troubled by it, they become withdrawn about it, they sometimes don't want to talk about it, things of this nature. You can't go to school and tell everybody you saw a UFO. Kids end up, that's it, you're in the yard over here, we'll be over here, see you later. So, you have those problems. Teachers certainly don't know how to deal with this. And I have a variety of cases running right now that are like that, where the children are just extremely intelligent at a very young age. And they know things they couldn't know without some kind of knowledge somewhere being brought to them. Some of them are rather interesting. One of them I have is actually a similar, like a reincarnation case. And the details of it are so specific, it could actually be investigated to find out that it was real. And the parents did go through the trouble of trying to verify it, and they did come up with verifiable information. Everything that the child knew of the previous life was verifiable. That scared the heck out of the parents, to say the least. And father didn't want to know nothing about it. And so that was one of the things that came out of it. So I tried to, like I said, help the woman to get over the fact that the kids saw it, and look, you can work with them. If anything, if they want to know, there is good information out there. Window puts out some great publications. There are a few UFO magazines out there that have some credibility, that they do check sources to find out about. If you want to read and learn more, here's some ways to do it. And that's pretty much where I left it. And they were just happy that I stayed in contact with them and at least got back to them. Now, the next photo you're going to see, if you can turn it on, is one of a series. And I've got a bunch of them. And this is what makes it very difficult. We do not know the authenticity of this case. It not only comes with all kinds of photos, they were done with 3 different cameras at 3 different times in 3 different places. The man wrote a book because he has contact with them. He didn't ask for it, it happened. And he says they instructed him to write down what they were telling him so he could remember it and hopefully tell other people. And if he influences 2 people to maybe doing something better for everybody, it was worthwhile. So this gentleman took a lot of photos, and this is one of them. What had happened here, this is photo 101. This was taken on the 25th of December, 1990. And it was taken at about 9:45 a.m. Now the gentleman had just bought the piece of property that he was living at, so he had really gotten into getting up in the morning and grabbing a camera and going out and looking at the horses and photographing the rooster and whatever happened to be out there. And he naturally picked up the camera when he went out on Christmas Day, going, well, it's Christmas, it's beautiful, let's take a photo of the new house, etc. And he has a small buzzing in his head, which many have reported. Billy Myers, I believe, said he had a type of buzzing in his head before he would have a sighting. And that's all he really remembers about that. No messages, just a buzzing in the head. And next thing you know, he sees this speck coming over the horizon. And as it got closer and closer, at first he said it's a plane. The guy, he knows about aviation. He's built models, and he has a home-built craft in his barn, an old German-type model that used to have the machine gun that shoots through the propellers. It was the first one that didn't shoot the propeller off. It was the one that shot synchronized with the propeller, which ran with the engine. So he had knowledge about aviation. He had built this thing. He did not have the background on the wings. He had about 600 hours to go, but he had built every part of it. And based on my knowledge of aviation, which I've been involved in ultralights and things of this nature for a lot of years, one of my friends has set many world records, and we developed things that didn't exist that are now standard in the industry. It's become very common. So I realized what he got there will fly. All he's got to just get the wings on it, probably do a little fine tuning. But everything is there, it's intact, and it's ready to go. So I knew the man had knowledge of this. And so this makes it more difficult. Now we have a guy that knows how things fly, knows how to build things, which, some of us aren't real good at it. I don't build models that well myself. I always had to customize them. They never sort of turned out the way the box said. And so this guy had this knowledge, and the next thing you know, he's got photos in the yard. And the object came down, and before it left, he managed to get 4 shots that morning. And this is the first one. And is there a truck? Yeah, there's a truck actually underneath that object driving by. Now, I spent 3 weeks beating around the bushes trying to find the driver of that truck, and it got very difficult because you got a blue truck which looks like a brown panel on the side, and possibly a silver tailgate. And as I began to get deeper and deeper into this and comb the area, which is not that large, a lot of people got pickup trucks, but if there's one on that mountain, I want to find it if it's there unless they got rid of it. And so I was going through everybody's yard looking for a truck and looking for the driver. And I believe I found the truck. But it's not a brown panel pickup truck. I believe what we have is a blue truck that is reflecting the ground, the brown ground in the side of the truck. It may even have possibly a silver panel, but I don't think it did, because I do believe I found the truck. I just haven't been able to get hold of the occupant of the truck. But it was very interesting, because here's the guy taking the pictures, and he says, geez, a truck went by. I wonder if he saw it. What did he see? Because it's far on the other side of the truck, so you would have had clear view of it. So that was the first one. The truck drove by. Now there's no other witnesses, and the next shot comes on. Okay, well, that's a blow-up of that shot to give you a little bit better idea. Is the object clear? Can you see it? Yeah. We're dealing with Polaroids here, so there's no way to enhance or get better. All we have is the originals, and unfortunately, some of the negatives for the other shots are no longer available. They were taken. They were taken by the occupant of the craft, which is this interview or this talk goes on, you're going to get to see. As I said, I do not know the authenticity of this. I did my best to put holes in it while I was there. I couldn't do that successfully. I have questions in my mind, but we all do. We probably never will. There's still people questioning Billy Myers' case after all that evidence. So we have to keep doing that, though. This keeps us on the straight. This gets rid of the holes in the things, the hoaxes. If we keep that attitude, we will find it. And at least we know, well, that one doesn't fit. This one, this is good. This one, now it's up to you whether you want to accept it or not, but all the indications, by all the technology we have, says it's real. So those are the kind of things we like to go through as much trouble as we can to bring out. So I blew this one up a little bit better. The next photo you will see, there you go. Well, one of the things I wanted to do was try to get an idea of the size of the object. So in order to do that, I had to measure everything. Tree stumps, barns, there was nothing there known. To triangulate, normally you use 2 or 3 known coordinates, feed those in a computer, and you can come up with the other object. You can break it down into pixels and digitize it, do all kinds of things, which Wendell is working on with me in this case. And unfortunately, at this point, the computers have not turned this thing around and said this isn't there. So it's still ongoing, and this is the part that's so troubling for me, because I would like it to be simple. I've gone in and debunked some cases in 2 hours and walked out, and then told the person where they took the photos, what the photos were of, and how they took them. And at that point, they became very humble and said, geez, I must have made a mistake. I'm sorry. I must have been confused it. I said, look, if you got a real photo in there somewhere, it's in the negatives. I'll be happy to look for it. Me, more than anybody, would love to see it. But what you have here is not. And I'm sure of that. And usually they just bow out and go. Well, this case wasn't that simple. So we measured every darn thing, and I ended up sending Wendell very, very large measurements on paper so he could feed them in the computer and be able to read them. I measured stumps, etc. But one of the problems with this was, in each picture, an object that was there on the 25th of December last year is now not there. So that got difficult. So now I'm measuring the widths of trees, and I'm measuring the height of the barn, figuring, well, the barn could have moved in the last year, that's got to be known, and we did that. And through each of 3 pictures, that's what we did. The next picture will show the next photograph. This is shot 1002. It was coming in closer. And what it did, basically, if I was standing here, the object came in across here, and then went back out that way. We got the 4 shots, and that was it. He didn't know who was in it. He didn't really care. Just like, wow, I got a picture of a flying saucer. You can end it with, we say UFO, but it's unidentified. This was identified. It's a flying saucer. It's not a plane, not a helicopter. It's obvious. It didn't make any noise either. That was pretty interesting. So we did photograph it, and this is what we had gotten. Also, I did the same thing. I tried to blow this up a little bit better. The next slide. And, well, I guess, all right, we went into the others. So somewhere in there's another blow-up. We may run into it later. This is also one of the other photos. This is probably 1003, and it seems to be out of order because it's blown up before the actual picture got there, but the Polaroid will be right behind this. But this is on its descent on its way back out of the area. And after it went out of there, he has no idea if it disappeared or what. It got out of his view and it was just gone. But that also is the object. We can take another photo. You want another slide? Okay, same thing. All right, there was the triangulation on the last shot we saw. I told you there was other measurements, but they moved around. You can continue on. Did you go backwards there? Does that say 1003? Okay, that's the one you just saw the blow up on. That was the next Polaroid that was taken. Now, of all the shots to fake, Polaroids are a little bit harder. They pose a problem. They tried to do this in Ed Walter's case. The neighbor comes up and says, oh yeah, he made them, and let me show you how he did it. They look terrible. I looked at them and said, I'm sorry, they don't pass. He's got this object, and you've got this object, and it's obvious to somebody that knows what they're looking for. They are not the same. And any fool that's going to listen to you is really just that, in my eyes. Because, there's a lot of scoffers out there, and naysayers, as Walter says, that will try to say something isn't. But like you said, I took the photos. I don't care if you believe me or not. They're there. If you can tell me what it is and who's in it, then okay, maybe my photos aren't as genuine. But that has not happened, and he ended up having encounters with the occupants as well. So in this particular case, it got another shot. They get closer and closer, and they're basically very clear. They're in the daytime, and they're done with a Polaroid. And a Polaroid, as I said, is very hard to mess with in comparison to others, especially if it's silver. If you got something silver on that, that's a little bit harder to come up with. If you've ever scratched anything into a Polaroid, you can make lines into it. You can draw your name into the Polaroid, etc. You ruin it once it's done, and it's very obvious because you have marks in it. But it can be done, and therefore, if he did fake this, if it's an overlay, if there's something that happened, I would like to know how he did it because he did his homework in producing it. The next shot. Blew that one up. And if you can see this clearly, which I don't know how much you can see on the slide, you can see the bottom of this object as well as the top of the object and the sides, which is kind of neat because now we have an idea of what the bottom looks like and what the shapes are under there. Later you will see a diagram of the ship broken down in a line drawing that shows you the different layers and the different things that are there. And so I also blew that one up. Now, the occupants of the house behind this left that morning, because that's what had just happened just before he took these photos. Saw the neighbor come by and said, oh, hi, Merry Christmas, thanks for the party, etc. And off they went. And the next thing you know, this happens. Of course, there's nobody around. The wife's not there. Don't know where she is, but there's never enough time to grab the wife while the UFO's in your backyard. And who cares? Because right now you're worried about the UFO. But unfortunately, she didn't see it either. The next photograph should be 1004, which is the last one taken, which shows it going further away. Also, we did the same thing, broke all of these things down into measurements. I measured the garage on the house behind all of this. I went over there and measured the height of the garage, the width of the garage, there's a pickup truck back there. I basically was finding out what pickup truck it was and what are the dimensions of that window, so that something in this would be known that we could coordinate this with. And at this point, we still have not been able to do that successfully. And so this is what we have. Now, according to the contactee, this is a 21-foot object. I don't have verification of that. According to the cosmonaut, if you will, the driver of this craft, they can change shape at will. The craft is organic. It is part of them. They create it. It is individually done between each and every ET, which is something that up till now, nobody had come up with, and if they do, not too many of us are ready to believe it anyway. But it's what had come up and what he was told. And it explains some things for some cases, but not this one, and this is what we're dealing with now. And so that's exactly what we've got. Those are the 4 shots. Now these are the Polaroid shots. These are the ones a little bit harder to do. And if he did do them, how did he get the object up there? If it's a remote control object or it's an object he hung from a wire, how did he get it up there? That first shot you saw, 1001, way out in the field above that truck. You see how big the truck is? This thing's way on the other side of it. I want to know how you got it there. If you hung it from something, how'd you stop it from swinging to get a clear photo of it? And how'd you get it to keep coming in closer without exposing how it was done? Very, very difficult things. And if anybody got the answers, hey, I'll be happy to listen to them. I'm ready for anything. I would like to turn this over or go, yeah, this is a great case and this is phenomenal. But I just stay objective and keep going and looking for it. And so that's the last one that we have there. I don't know what's after that. What was the next one after? Okay, we blew that up a little bit closer. As you can see, it gets bigger and it gets closer and just gets clearer, but it is there. And some different details about it. He said it was moving approximately 20 miles per hour. Then it went to the left, which would have been northwest, and then it left. And that was it for that day as far as he knew. And as time went on into the whole thing, we got into how we met the occupant and where he met the occupant. This gets rather amusing to me because I'm not in the habit of meeting aliens in everyday life on the street that I know about, certainly no one that presents himself that way. The occurrence of how this came about is the gentleman was at the party at the house behind him. It was a Christmas party. Didn't know anybody there, but the people who lived there had all their relatives there. This was also part of what I had to go through in the investigation. I had to question these people without exposing who I was checking on. That was not as easy, but I did it. And they still don't know who it is out there that's had these sightings. But now, there's several cases out there, so nobody's ever going to be sure. Because I turned over a lot of stuff while I was there. So I've kind of at least kept the confidentiality of these people underhand, and I hope to keep doing that so as to not turn their neighborhood into a UFO circus. Because, for one thing, they're not having sightings there anymore. The occupant shows up, has his normal meeting, but he doesn't fly in that way. This was for him, to initiate him to what was going to happen later that night when the occupant showed up. But what had happened was he met somebody at the party. And the guy walks up and says, hi, I'm so-and-so. And he says, hi, how do you, nice to meet you. And the guy says, do you like celestial phenomenon? And the guy said, yeah, I always kind of been a stargazer. I like to see things. And he says, you want to see something? And he said, sure. And the guy said, well, come on outside. So the guy politely takes him outside and says, check it out. And all of a sudden, this, what he thought was a shooting star goes screaming across the sky. And he says, wow, that's really neat. And he looks back, the guy's gone. Right there and then, he's gone. The guy says, well, I'm getting kind of cold here by myself. That was real neat. Let's get back to the party and eat the food. And so that's exactly what he did. And that's where it laid for that evening. And he didn't think much of it. Well, later, I believe it was taken, let me see in my notes here, because I have tried to keep notes to try to keep things detailed. The same thing happened again. Just before he had the occupant show up at his house, he saw another one of these shooting star deals. And again, it just dispersed, and he said, wow, that is pretty neat. 2 of them in a day or so? That's really interesting, because it was a little bit more than a shooting star. It trailed. It left a heck of a trail. It was really neat according to his description. He was awed by it. He said, that was really phenomenal. And then the guy disappears, and he goes, I don't know why he didn't stay to watch. He points it out to me, but now he's not there. It's very strange. But like I said, it was a Christmas party. He didn't care. He's just going in, get the food, whatever else. So we've gotten some more details about the ship. And one of the things they come up with is the Earth weighs over 4 tons. It's capable of generating 500,000 pounds of force of power in any direction. It projects a protective shield of force to withstand many times that amount of pressure without energy consumption. So we can do whatever we want to try to get him out of the air, as we did in Billy Meyer's case, where we chased him, what was it, 21 or 23 times unsuccessfully with a jet, and they just kept disappearing here and going over there, and even if we would have fired at him, we probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere with it, but some people with funny minds, at least we're going to try to seek and contain and get that advantage, but they never quite got it. I kind of like the way they kind of just avoided him and made an idiot out of him rather than, do anything to really detain what he was doing. The ship generates light beams for many uses and travels at any speed. Now they're talking the speed, traveling at the speed of light. They said radio beams cannot travel as fast, therefore they got no transmitters, no receivers on board, they have no use for it. As you know, as far as we know, most of the aliens we have dealt with seem to be telepathic. These guys are no exception. This case is supposedly, and based on everything we know about it, dealing with the Pleiadians again. And the interesting part about this is they claim, the occupant claims to be one of the contactees of Billy Myers. He claims to be the gentleman, the old gentleman that was known as Sparth, and I guess it's S-F-A-T-H. Well, he says that he was the occupant and he was the contactee, but he disguised himself as an old man. So that later, when it was time to terminate this and bring on a new advisor to help Billy in his education and what he was supposed to be doing, that he could go on doing something else and kind of bow out. So very simply, they told him that he died. And that's when this guy moved on and went on to the next, whatever it was he was supposed to contact. And so it seemed interesting to me. Hopefully, as time goes on, some of these coordinated informations that are coming to us about the two cases, hopefully something in there will come out either where it doesn't jive or it does jive and make it a little bit easier to figure out what we've got going on here. If the gentleman has done his homework to create all of this, he's really done some good stuff, because some of the things he came up with aren't published anywhere. And I learned about him from being personally involved with some of the investigators to actually hear about him. So I was very impressed with some of the knowledge he came up with. And to my knowledge, he only has one tape of the Billy Meyer case and one of the books which he had to get a hold of, and that was it. And as you know, there are 5 books out, 5, 6 tapes out. There's more publicity on that case than any that we know of, as well as all the contacts and what they went about. I have those books, but he doesn't. And I wanted in some way to volunteer some information about that case, but I said, nah, I'm not giving this guy anything more than what he's got. And maybe if there's something wrong with it, I'll figure it out. If not, maybe he can teach me something about all this that we didn't know. And that's what had come out. They went on to talk about that it was Forte that he had contact with. They also said that Asket may not have been female, because these beings are androgynous. They are male, female. One of the things as far as looking, and so therefore they can pass feature-wise. They're very feminine-looking face, and when you see the photo that you come to see of this guy, some people think he's a mannequin, other people think he's a rather strange-oriented person, whereas gay or whatever it may be, whatever it may, their feelings were, they said, well, this guy looks kind of, I'm going, well, he's got feminine qualities to him, but, it's just the way he looks, that's all I have is to present what I have. So that's what we'll get into a little bit more about them and their society as time goes on. What I'm going to do is, the gentleman has written about a 200-page book of these contacts and all the things he's learned so far. The contacts are still going on, and they're supposed to go on for 11 years. They say they contacted people for 11-year cycles because that's all our Earth human can handle at a time. 11 years, and then the stress gets too much, and it's time to let the guy have a break, and then we'll do it again if it works out well. So I've tried to pick some of the highlights out of these 200 pages that I could share with you that would be interesting food for thought. If you want to believe it, great. If it don't fit, hey, that's fine too. I'm going through the same thing. And so they talk about they don't use speed while remaining in solid form. In other words, they transport. If in fact the ship is organic, as they say, they transfer it into a light form, as we've seen many. That case that if all of you or any of you have gotten to see the Belgian UFO case that was shown on Unsolved Mysteries lately, I really enjoyed that. For one reason, they showed policemen, gendarmes who had the sighting and chased it around all night. And in the end of all of this, which I thought was the most phenomenal, because I've recently just looked at the new popular science, and they've got some great, well, we're supposed to have in our future jets that proceed or go after the stealth. And these babies are triangular. They're diamond-shaped objects, such as the Russians had shown us at the last conference. These things are really neat, and they're ours. And supposedly they don't exist yet, but I've come to kind of realize that if they're going to show it to us, they've done it. They're pretty secure about what they've done, and eventually you're going to be you're being desensitized, because if you run into it, well, it's ours. And this gets very difficult because it looks like our new step of technology is going to make it very difficult for people to tell what was an IFO or a government craft from an alien craft, because we're looking so close. And they've been seen, and they don't make any noise, and they've been seen doing right angle turns at an incredible speed in a moment, and these are ours. We're testing them. So it is getting more difficult for us to disseminate now what is and what isn't a UFO based on an extraterrestrial vehicle. And so these are one of the things we have to deal with. So these guys say that they break the vehicle down in solid form. They transfer the vehicle and themselves and anything else they care to into plasmic light. Anything. You're in the craft, you go for a ride, you somehow break down with that craft. I don't know how it happens. We know of cases where the people walk in a 21-foot craft and they get inside and the place is huge, like a warehouse. But it's a 21-foot craft. Where did all of that come from? So these are the things that get a little difficult for us, who have limited ideas about what's supposed to be at this point, to really handle. But that's what they said. They can transfer anything, anyway. And this is very interesting, and it's part of what we're dealing with. And we are now in the generation of enlightenment in a way that we've never had on this planet. It seems that the people like yourselves in this room and the children growing up are going to be comfortable, or at least knowledgeable, about extraterrestrial life, about the crafts, because it's going to become, I believe, so common. And the lid is coming off of this so quickly, and I'm very, very glad, because I'm tired of being lied to and told that, oh, that isn't there, that's something else, when you know darn good and well, you know what you saw, you got the stuff, you have the photos, try to tell me it's not there. There's just no way. And it's about time we've gotten to the truth of these things and found out what the government knows and what they're not telling us. And we are now becoming educated as to the many types of beings, the types of crafts, and we can finally categorize and put into certain things that this fits with this side, this one fits with that side. No, we're not sure, but we've got enough indications to be pretty comfortable with our assumption. I don't know if we'll ever be sure. I don't know if any of our generations will ever be positive until they're out here walking around and say, yeah, you want to see my craft? Here, I'll bring it down for you. Boom, there the craft shows up. You get to go inside, take a look. What do you think? Okay, boom, it's gone. Maybe at that time, we can say, yeah, we're sure, this is here. I kicked it, I saw it just before it disappeared. I don't know how I did that, but I did kick it, I heard the clang. And that's what we would all like to do. We don't always get that chance. But we've got enough cases, thousands of them, hundreds of them, that we're now being able to get some categories and get some what we think to be true things or true knowns versus the not sures and the unknowns, which there'll be more of. They arrive as instantly as they depart. About the time it disappears, it's reappeared where it's supposed to be. This is very interesting, very nice travel. I wish I could have done that on the way to this conference, because that plane ride was really a bummer. To be able to do that is a heck of a concept, and they travel that way. If they are traveling on light beams and this is what they use, then that's probably the only way we could explain it. It's like the speed of light. Well, when you see it, then you don't. And they say they're able to do that. And I find that to be quite fascinating. There's no fuel, no provisions. There's no provisions for the passengers. The only thing I know of in one of the crafts that he was in was a bench, a round bench. And of course up top there's like windows, but it's like one window kind of, okay? It's a window and there's a top and a bottom, but the top's one shape, the bottom's kind of curved. There's only windows in certain places. We don't even see them from the outside, but they're in there. So he actually got to go for a ride and look through the window and take a few photos. This is interesting. This is the part I really had fun with, because I'm not too sure about that at all. But he says he was in it. Who am I to disagree? He's got these photos, he's got a bunch more. So, and he's got a picture of the occupant. And as you're going to find out as we get a little further, he may have the only picture of a spacesuit I've ever seen, which he was asked to put on before he went for the ride. Because I guess we're not real good at the breakdown here when they do this. So they do something to protect us, so that's kind of nice. They were at least concerned about this contactee and said, look, you better do this, we'll take you for a ride, but in order to keep you intact, you should wear this. And so they did. The occupant himself came in a suit. It was a green overall, sort of sparkly, kind of silverish, but green. And because it was Christmas, when he showed up on the guy's door, the lights were blinking off and on from the Christmas tree, and he's seeing all kinds of colors, and it took him a while to realize that that's not the ship, it's not a suit, it's the tree over here. But it was metallic, it was kind of an overall looking thing. And obviously he wore something in the craft as well to protect him. Whereas we have run into people wearing special suits, ETs, etc., wearing special suits, and we're getting kind of used to the fact that they don't come down here unprotected. I don't know if it's to protect them from us, where this guy is so sneaky at being able to get around and just appear where he wants. He doesn't seem to need protection, whereas other guys, if they were walking around, I think it'd be advisable to have a bulletproof suit if you look too strange around here. Who knows what's going to happen? If we don't capture you, somebody may shoot you. Who knows? You have to watch today. There's so many people that you just can't tell how they're going to react. We have to take the fear away from these situations by educating what we do know. And there are some contacts where I don't think there's a need for fear. There's a genuine concern of, what is this? Why did they pick me? But I don't think we have to be scared of them. And I think the Pleiadians, the Nordics as we call them, are very possibly those. The ones that we may be able to trust more than others. One of the problems with all of the cases that I seem to have come across, and I think everybody in the field has, there's always been some amount of deception in there. These guys are not an exception. They may have deceived Billy. They may not. But they say, he didn't go on a mothership. We gave him a post-hypnotic suggestion, and we managed to pop him somewhere, and he thought he was in a mothership. He didn't go to another planet. We made him think he was. I'm not saying he didn't. I don't know. This is just what he says, and he says he's the guy that contacted him. So this is the occupant I'm talking about, not the contactee. So who knows? Maybe they did use some deception, but they gave the guy hundreds and hundreds of feet of good photos. They gave him all kinds of stuff to play with. They gave him some physical evidence, and all kinds of things for him to feel, hey, you do have something here, and you can go and show this to your scientists and your credible investigators, and this should open their eyes, and hopefully their minds, and maybe they'll listen to the rest of the stuff we're going to tell you. And that's really what I think a lot of this is coming down to, the message. What's the message? What are they doing? Why are they here? Why do they bother coming to this place, of all places, which is probably one of the more hostile planets that I'm sure they could be visiting, but they still continually come back. They say they have contacted 75,000 people as of, I believe that was around 1975, and yes, and they now are up to about 200,000 people, and they're hoping by the turn of the century to be up to 500,000. And as you know, it's going on everywhere, and as many people have shown you in their presentations, as Michael Hussman, etc., anybody can be a contactee, it seems. If you have the true desire and you're in the right place at the right time and they're ready for you, they get a reason to let you know, they seem to bring themselves forward. They got no problem about it. And I really like that. I'm hoping someday they at least land in my backyard and I can get a picture of them looking out the window waving while I'm looking in. And then I hope to go inside. And, a lot of us would love to do that. I was one of those that was crazy enough for many, many years to say, look, you want me to go? Come take me. I got no problems. Don't mess with my animals, but I'll go. No problem. I've had that burning desire to know. And I never thought we were alone. I just didn't think this was the only place that was built. The only place created. It just couldn't be. In my estimation, anybody that made something this incredible couldn't have stopped here. Well, he does this for a couple of days, and then he goes off, and that's it, permanent vacation. To me, it just wasn't in my concept of reality and everything that I had learned. I just couldn't be that limited. And I was just kind of hoping that there had to be something else out there. And since we've got probably 1 million years worth of things that we don't understand, cave drawings of spaceships and aliens, and Indian drawings of spaceships, and all this other evidence around, it's obviously been coming here a long time. And there's a lot of different guys that are coming here to visit. So to go on, as I said, they're working on about 500,000 before the turn of the century, and that's a heck of a lot of people. Now this is just them, the Pleiadians. As you know, there are many, many cases. We have the fantastic Puerto Rico cases, and there's all kinds of people running into them, and all types of qualified people. The military is getting very heavily involved, things of this nature. So we know that there's obviously a lot of different types, and they all seem to go about their own way of how they're going to communicate and what they're going to tell. And like I said, we have the problem of trying to deal through, okay, the guy's giving me all this straight stuff, and I can believe this. But what about this? This is far out. Did he make this up? Is this to see how far I'll believe? What is it? I mean, they're telepathic. They know what you're thinking. They may tell you something funny just to hear what you think. And so, it's something we have to weigh out, and it's whether you want to accept that message for yourself or you don't. They travel in linear space and hyperspace. They can move from point A to point B at any speed up to including the speed of light, or leap into hyperspace and just disappear and reappear in another place almost instantly. This just boggles the mind. I hope to sometime get to experience that, because that just seems incredible. And until I'm in it, it's going to be a little bit tough for myself, and I'm sure many others, to accept. The molecular structure is built by telepathic energy, conceived and shaped by the individual ET for practical and convenient reasons. They come in every size and shape according to them, and we've seen every size and shape, and according to all the things we've seen, whether we want to believe them or not. This guy says he saw it, it was triangular. That guy says he saw it, it was pyramidal. But had 4 sides instead of 3 sides. There's always been a variety. We've got round ones, we've got egg-shaped ones. Gosh, we've got so many of them. So that may help to understand why we see so many of them, besides the fact that there's different people in them that create different kinds of craft. I did some reading back into 14th century history that I had gotten a UFO encyclopedia from Europe. And when the Russians were here presenting their marvelous, marvelous material, they were showing the craft, and they had that one craft that sort of looked like a windmill with a propeller on it. And quite frankly, a lot of us looked at that and said, come on, it looks like it's made out of bricks. This looks like a house, a UFO. That thing flew, give me a break, it's probably 80 tons. Then I read on to this article where they talked about in the 14th century, they were having craft hovering over their cities and flying by that actually threw anchors out. And one of them got caught in a church cathedral. And a little guy comes out of the craft, hangs upside down, and he cuts the rope, because now they can't get it off, and they apparently had a problem going backward. And back then, they were using propellers. And for the first time, I'm reading this going, maybe this puts some of this other stuff in perspective. Maybe they developed like we have. And they got a little better as time went on. And they realized, hey, we don't need propellers here. They got magnetism all over this planet. Why don't we use the poles that are here? We could use that and really fly. That'll blow them away, and we can go like heck, and they won't be able to catch us. Because as it is, certain people organized a little group to try to catch these guys next time they came by, and they had sightings. And the local bishop says, no, don't bother them. Anchor will keep us a sacred object, and we'll keep it here in the cathedral, and leave them alone. And I guess the bishop was pretty smart, because he kind of realized anybody who was doing that, and when nobody else was doing that, is not anybody you really want to mess with today. If you get a little bit better prepared and you're a little bit more knowledgeable, maybe, but to deal with something at that time would be like us trying to stop a stealth. It's like, I don't know who's doing that, but I don't think I really want to know. And at that time, it was safer to have that kind of attitude, I assume, than to try to chase them down. God knows what we would have used to chase them with. Grab the anchor, hang on. Very strange. But it showed me that there seemed to be cases that showed developments of crafts, different types of propulsion systems. So then all of a sudden, the craft in Russia, up on the hill that looked to me like a windmill, seemed to be more possible. And that, maybe this was a stage of their evolution, because the Russians have some phenomenal, fantastic cases that go back for a long time. And they, like everyone else in the world, is finding traces of these things now and being able to put those pieces together. And that's very exciting, and they have their own contacts and contactees. So they're able to get their self in perspective with what's going on as well. But to me, that was one of the hardest ones. I looked at that, I said, man, looks like bricks. How the heck could it fly? It's got a propeller. It just didn't make sense. But that started to put it in perspective. So now that we're dealing with people who are obviously much more far advanced, we've got a few centuries ahead for us. Gosh knows how much the time is for them. They've developed to a much higher ability. The longest journey is calibrated in minutes. It takes them a few minutes to get wherever they want to go. This kind of conflicts with some of the stuff we thought we knew about the Pleiadians. They talked about going, I think it was 7 hours from Pleiades to here. In which case, I believe 6 of them were in hyperspace speed, and it took, or an hour, which was actually minutes or something, was in a hyperspace capability, and the rest of the time is basically slowing down. Which before they got to this atmosphere, because they say when they blink in or blink out or they do something like that, when it's in an atmosphere where there's other things, it affects the other things as well. And so they try to control that upon coming here. There's a vortex on the top of the center similar to the atmospheric vortex that is found in a speeding jet. And in one of the photos you're going to see, it seems to possibly pick that up. I was hoping it was going to be a wire, because I could at least found out what the heck he did. Didn't know how he made it or what he made it out of, but all of a sudden we may have had a wire. You can turn on the next photo. Let's see what's up there. There you go. There's one I'm talking about. This was done with a 35 millimeter camera. It was done, let's see, I can get you the dates here. This was done, I call this the snow scene because that's what's down there. I would not be up there during that time for the life. Only 2 shots in the camera. They were done December 30th at 12 o'clock. Now, very interesting thing. Throughout this whole case, and even into his past, 12 o'clock seems to be a great time for these guys to show up. Pictures are taken at 12 o'clock. He's got telepathic contacts at 12 o'clock. It kind of amazes him how this guy always shows up at 12 o'clock. I don't know if they got a clock or what, but it seems 12 o'clock's the key. It's very interesting. Once or twice, there's been some 2 o'clock in the morning stuff. After the wife's in bed, nobody's going to know they're having a contact. Then they have the contact. That was kind of interesting. This was taken by a Minolta X67 35mm with a 50mm lens. He thought it was about 50 yards away, maybe 30 feet off the ground. And it then again also went from left and went to the west. There are 2 photos. There's 2 photos like this. That electric line is very simply just a power line for like a barn. It's very lightweight. If we hung a shoe on it, it would pull, it would bend. I'm sure that object, even if you made it out of balsa wood, would have done something. There'd be at least a little dent in the line where it was hanging, something like that. So far, that hasn't turned up by the computers. I sort of spotted in one of these 2 photos what I thought was a line above the craft right down the center. And I said, Jesus, this thing have an antenna? He said, no, there's no antenna. There's no radios. And I said, well, then, hey, it's hanging off the line. And he says, no, it's not hanging off the line, believe me. I get all these other shots, there's no lines around. So, logic's working here. I'm trying to go, well, then what do we got? I said, the only thing I know about is in some cases, there's been a vortex mark. You can see it, just slightly. Sometimes because they're bending light or bending energy, once in a while this will become apparent. And it'll be spotted, usually on film more than by the eye. With a jet, yeah, you may be able to catch it, but it's going to be a real trick to do. But it would be much more obvious with a jet who's making a much larger vortex than something of this nature. And this thing's hovering. It's not going anywhere, it's stationary. So we did some work on this one as well, and I tried to do some measurements. There's another photo right after this. There we go. Now I measured everything. I went for the sign out in the field behind that. Found out it was 4 feet 1 inch, and it was exactly 33 feet from the pole behind it. I measured the poles in front of it, below it, beside it. I went for everything. Because, again, one of the primary key objects below that was a pole. There was a pole here, and then the telephone pole. Of course, the pole in front's missing. Taken out of there. That would have been great. That would give us an idea of the distance between that pole and the pole behind it. We could have told you where the UFO was. Probably come up with the size and shape, but nope, that's missing. So I had to I was going to recreate this, but later I got stopped. I guess there was a bit of apprehension going on because the gentleman was maybe a little worried about now the neighbors seeing us hanging a UFO out in the backyard trying to recreate the scene, because I thought, let's make a model. Even if we make it out of a really good Winnebago hubcap that looks good, looks like a UFO, but we know the size. It's 18 inches. And we hang that up there and we take the photo, try to recreate it. Take that, put that in the computer, take this, put this in the computer, and we'll get ideas. If there's now something in there, we're going to know. We got a known object versus an unknown object. It should get a whole lot easier to figure it out. At the last minute, couldn't do that. That was very annoying to me because I really wanted to do it just to see what it would turn out like. If it would even look good. Would it be clear? Would it be this small? And so it's obvious this isn't it. But at the last minute, we couldn't do it. But I did my darndest to come up with every measurement I could around there that if we could get this in the computer, it would help us. As I said, the computers have not given us a nay or a yay. Specifically, it's there, and it's obvious it's there, so that's what we went with. The next shot should be the second photo after that. Oh, I started blowing them up a little bit. Here you can see the ship a little bit better with the cone on it. The next photo after that should be possibly even larger than that. There you go. There's a little bit closer. Now that may be about the closest still photo you're going to get. You can see the underneath. I'd love to be a wire there that you can see. There is a small, whatever it is, protruding above it, but that's apparently attached to the ship, and the other pictures have it as well. So it wasn't just exclusive of this particular sighting or this particular series of pictures. Like I said, this is a 35mm. It's a whole lot easier to deal with a 35mm if you're going to try to fake something. There's a lot of stuff you can do with a lab. As a freelancer, I specialized in taking hang gliding photos of the guy hang gliding and putting them on a sky that wasn't there. I found a great sky. It's absolutely beautiful. It's phenomenal. It's picturesque. So I take the picture. And then later I go up on the hill, and I was usually the nose guy, the one that held them as they went off the mountain, and I would take their picture going, and then later I take the two of them, put them together, and I go, wow, this is great. And then I present it to the guy, and boom, sail just like that. I didn't fly that sky, but I did fly. That is me. I'll take it, and I'll put those over the fireplace. So I got pretty good at doing this, and I spent a lot of time in the lab creating things like that. So this one here, at least, is very clear. You can see the cone underneath. Supposedly the energy goes through the top and somehow comes out the bottom. I'm not exactly sure how they do it. The Billy Meyer photos don't exactly condone this, They're showing energy wave that seems to be in front of them. Whereas what we've learned in a lot of cases, they create the field and it pulls the craft along. And that way, that field is actually protecting the craft as well. That's why there's no sonic boom, because there's no friction of the molecules smashing against the object. So knowing this, when he told me how the energy goes, I'm going, well, that's interesting, but I have nothing to back that up. And because we don't have original negatives, because they took the negatives and said, look, we don't want to give you conclusive evidence. What we're trying to do here is give you something to give people some interest and then pass off the message. And the messages I begin to present to you, it will be nothing abnormal. It's all the kind of messages we kind of hope that they're bringing anyway, save the earth, things like this. This is very common, and I think it's a good time to be doing that. And if they got to bring a UFO in a guy's backyard and give him a great picture to wake him up so he listens to them, then that's great. I'd like to bring one down over the White House again and get 26 of them again over the top of it and do this all over again like we did in the 50s and go, now, tell us it's not there. Because this time I think there's going to be a heck of a lot more people out there watching than there was last time, and it's going to be a whole lot harder to get rid of. Okay. Well, I'm not done. Okay, I'll keep going. And I'm going to rush through this as fast as I can then, because there was a lot of material here. I didn't know how much time I would take or how much time it would take to cover it. Go on to the next photo. Okay, this gives you an idea of the craft itself, and it's a line drawing to show you specifically. This gives you the top, the sides, etc. The next photo will show you a top view of what the top and the bottom look like sectionally. I have them there that they were provided for me. I said, well, it'll just give you a little bit more view. Take the next photo. Okay, now we get into the cabin scene. Now this gentleman built a log cabin way up in the boonies in the upper western part of Pennsylvania, almost near New York. And he did an incredible job, and it's way up on the top of a hill. I mean, this thing is far. When you're going to see one of the last photos in this series, it's me at the bottom looking up. You can't even tell there's a cabin up there. And what had happened was the UFO, as he said, came down from above the power lines again. It was above the power lines this time, though. Went down over the top, and basically it was above a telephone pole, which I did measurements on. We're looking at about 40 feet, 42 feet approximately. Then proceeded to come down over the field and go until they continued back out over the back of the trees, and he managed to capture 8 pictures in that time. The guy's not a photographer, so he did his best. He did it with a throwaway camera. 35 millimeter garbage throwaway camera that you buy at the store, you send it in to get your film back. As it's been said before, these things take great photos. You don't have to worry about focusing, you don't have to worry about nothing, just shoot it. And that's what he managed to do this with. He's not a photographer. As far as I can tell, when I really look for things, he doesn't know diddly about photography. So I was very lucky that we even got photos that turned out with the object in the viewfinder. Shoot the next shot. Okay, now you can see it's proceeding across the front. Now this is the front porch of his cabin. And if you take another photo, you'll see it's going to continue to fly right over the top of the hill. Now, the interesting part about this is the farther it comes out in front of him, the higher this object is off the ground, because we have an incredible slope that this cabin sits on the top of, and it is a bowl. If you had a hang glider, all you had to take was 2 steps and you're off, because it would fly perfect. The lift there is incredible. So as it went further out, it ended up being much higher off the ground. By the time we're done, we've got something that's probably 60 feet in the air and maybe 80 feet before it finally left, because the ground had sloped so far, and this thing's 100 yards out. As I took a photo of him standing out there and said, lift your arms. He was swinging them. I couldn't even see the guy. He was only down there maybe 90 paces. So we realized that if this object is where it is, it's so far up in the air, I want to know how he got it there. Obviously, it wasn't something easy done with wires and stuff like that. Go on to the next photo. There you go. You see, now you can see it's worked its way towards the middle of the field. You can see that tree way at the bottom of the hill. Now that thing's high. That is definitely off the ground. It's a reasonably clear shot. He's still in a panic trying to shoot it, so all the photos have ended up in that corner of the film, because he's just trying to keep it, and it's going by, and he's just catching it before he loses it again. So he did manage to catch it. Go on again to the next one. Here we are, a little bit clearer. Nice, bright, sunny day. You can see that interesting glow around the rim, and it is out way over the field. And if I stood out there below where that is, you wouldn't even see me. I could have probably a 10-foot pole, and you may barely be able to see the top of the pole. So that's how far the ground actually is from where the craft is. Go on to the next photo. There it is again, still going past. Okay, now I went up there and checked all this out. I know where the tree is, and you can tell the thing's all passing and continuing in the travel that it did. Go on to the next one. Here it is leaving now. After it had passed him in front of him, he got these shots. Now it started to take off and went back out over the back of the trees, and that's where it went. And he has one more photo after this where you'll see it just continued going, and it's a little bit further away. So you can tell the object was moving because the object got big, it got smaller as it went away. So we know it was in travel, it was moving. I have nothing around it. There was nothing out there to give me any explanations of how it got there except on its own power. And as I said, this is an IFO. We know who's flying it, according to the people involved in this case. They have contact, he is getting messages. So that changes some of the details a little bit. Let me see, it's here. Oh yes, during the time this was done. This was January 5th at 9:30 a.m. to 12 o'clock. Except, the last thing he remembers is 9:30. There's 2.5 hours of missing time. He has no idea what happened. This was the reason why I said, look, we could probably get you hypnotized and find that out. And he had curiosity about that, but it wasn't convenient to do it at the time. I did set up a session, but we were not able to accomplish that. But I'm willing as much as anybody to, hey, let's find out. And I'm really curious what happened to that missing time. Here's my rubber band. What exactly went on? If they've had a willing confrontation with this gentleman, why did they abduct him for 2.5 hours after, thank you very much, after the contact had already started? Everything had been initiated. He's now on friendly terms. They've exchanged candy and whatever else. Why all of a sudden do they have 2.5 hours of missing time? It just doesn't make sense. But it's there, and it's part of what's involved in this that made it very interesting. We have some other photos as well. Do you want to pop off the next one here? Okay, that's where it first came down. That's off to the side of the cabin. And it was way out there where you see those lines that it came in. Now, the lines are there, so you realize if something did fly through there, they had to do a little bit of a tricky job to get around things, and the lines did then again come back in front of us, so it had to go over it. The next photo will show, that's me at the top, I believe looking down. Yeah, what's the one after that? Okay, the cabin is way at the top of that, in the trees. You see a teeny speck way at the top in the middle of that photo. That is the cabin. This is the bottom of that field. It's not all the way at the bottom, but it's probably a couple hundred yards to the next nearest house, because up there are no houses close together. Now, oddly enough, if this case was by itself, it'd be okay. But while I went up there, yes, I started asking people again. And one of the things we had heard of was, hey, there was an object that came down in front of an elderly lady's vehicle while she was on her way home and refused to move and sat in the middle of the road. Very large blue object spinning. And that was an interesting little story to hear about. And I kind of thought, well, let's talk to this guy's neighbor and see what they've seen. So if he's been having all these contacts, maybe they've seen something. I would just love somebody to collaborate this. We get down there, no, never saw anything, but real interested in that, always look. See a lot of things, but usually it turns out to be a plane. But then the lady went on to tell me that this area had a write-up in the paper, and they wrote it up under the heading of the Bermuda Triangle of Pennsylvania. Because this county, along with 2 other counties, has had a lot of sightings. And so they've actually coined that type of thing onto an area, which I don't think is the best thing to start rumors about, but normally there's only hunters up there and the locals, and not too many people come up there looking for a UFO. And so that was very interesting to find out, and the articles being sent to me and the information of it, and anything else that the person sees, because they do watch the property very well. The gentleman only goes up there on the weekends and stuff, and he built the cabin. So there's a lot of stuff to be up there. Are we really going too long? Geez, I did my best to try to make this good, and there isn't even enough time. But, well, if you want, okay, that's fine. Oh, the cocktail party. I'm sorry. You want to flash through what's left there? This is the other ship that he went for a ride in, okay? There's only 2 shots, that one and that one. The difference is, they were there for a while, because the fog lifted between the first shot and the second shot, and it's very clearly visible. And I watched it out there on a foggy day. It takes a few minutes for that to get off, 10, 15 minutes. So the craft was hovering there quite a while. These were pictures he took out the window. I'd love to think it was a plane, and I've tried to figure it out, especially flying over here, if it would have been and how it would have been done. It doesn't add up. So unfortunately, that still left a question in my mind as well. This is where he landed. He said that they took him somewhere out west, and he got to take photos through the windows, and then they set him down, he took that photo, and back he went. He has no idea where he was. He has no geography. That is the so-called spacesuit. The very interesting thing about the spacesuit is it comes loose fitting, and then somehow the ET gives it some kind of telepathic command, and it becomes form-fitting. Great wear. And so that's what had happened, which is very interesting. This may be the first time a photo's been taken of that. I'd still like to see it myself, but it was there. He was also given an object. This object was brought to him by a gentleman, but the occupant says that this object was dropped out of a UFO that was seen in Arizona. It was triangular, and when it was dropped, the guy watched it. The guy went over and picked it up and had it for quite a while, didn't know what to do with it, and walked in to see this man one day and says, do you buy stuff like this? And he said, well, maybe. And it's about 18 inches by 6 inches thick, It's a very highly magnifying piece of glass, and they said it came from the Aleutian Islands, out of a junkyard, an old military junkyard, which I was waiting for the military to come back and claim it soon. I found no interesting properties about it. They said they altered it. They said most of the objects that are given to contactees are terrestrial, but they've done little things to them or they make the guy think it isn't. They said, why would we bring something from another planet? It could be full of germs, it could kill all these guys. So that was their kind of simple logic, you know, whatever it would be. And so that is a terrestrial object. It looks like a lens from a telescope, which is what they kind of think it is. But it was brought to him, and we're waiting for what it's going to reveal, because supposedly later down the road, something will become apparent about this that will be real neat. So I'm like everyone else, just waiting. I held it, I looked at it, I tried to psychometrize it. I got nothing, it's a lens. It's great to look at UFO photos, though. It really makes them big. That was the nicest part about it. What's on after there? Okay, this is the occupant. Very androgynous. And maybe if we get some time at another time, I can talk more about this. But they said they went from hermaphroditism, where it's male and female both, to androgynism. And now they're progynous, which is asexual. It does not take two to reproduce. It is a mental thing. They do not know what comes after that. According to them, it took like 11 million years to reach this, and they have no idea what's after this. But this is the occupant. He wore glasses, so just as they said in the Billy Myers case, they'd like to walk around without being noticed. So he put some glasses on. I did some artist concepts. Maybe I can share them with you later of what he looks like behind the glasses, because I have a photo I can see through. Some people, like I said, say it's a mannequin. Some people say, well, I don't know. And at this point, all I'm doing is presenting the photo. It's very interesting. He is obviously very feminine looking. He could easily be disguised female or male and probably get away with it. I find no definite characteristics that says he's an alien. You know, nothing long earlobes or anything like that. The photo after this is a blow up a little closer, which when I had done this, like I said, I was able to see through the glasses a little bit better. So it just shows you. At some time, like I said, maybe if you talk about what they've talked about in the revolution and where they are now. The last photo may be, okay, this was a photo, this was an article was sent to me. I talked to a man recently, he said, look, you're not going to believe this. There's an article in the paper about the fires out in San Fernando Valley, and this guy says he was above the helicopter when the picture was taken, and now it's in the paper. We got an egg-shaped object up there. I don't know what it is, and so far I haven't come up with any logical explanation, but it was there, and this was published. My contactee, he was fascinated by it. He was very excited. To me, it's an unknown, but it is there. It was very clear, and he printed it that way. They didn't crop it out of the picture. So that was very interesting as well. And I believe that's it as far as the photos. And like Wendell says, we're out of time. I'll be love to share. Be happy to share any of the other information you would like to know about that I could share with you. There is a book that has been printed. It's ready. We're working on possibly publishing. If you're interested in it, you want to give me your name and number. When the time comes, this will be forwarded to you. Possibly, if Wendell finds the whole thing genuine enough, you may be into publishing it at a later date, and you'll get to see another great publication done by this man, as so many of them have been, that will be able to take home and say, look at this. This is a case that's really phenomenal. You ought to take a look at this. I thank you very much for your time. Have a good day.